Hello, everybody. I'm going to kind of just go through this show as fast as I can. Just going to kind of shoot it from the hip, no script. I was going to do those short videos with a dramatic voice, but I decided this would be better, just a little more mellow, and just kind of go about things this way today. You'll see as it unfolds. I don't even know what I'm going to do, to be honest. I will say this, though. It's been sunny and warm for as long as I can remember here in California. But the rain actually rolled in today. We had a little bit of a thunder and lightning display in the last hour. And now we've got a slightly steady kind of drip going on. The rain has come, surprisingly enough. But I looked at the forecast ahead, and really it's just going to kind of taper off as the day goes on here. And then tomorrow it's back to kind of a sunnyish day, then a couple more days of a little bit of showers, and then by the end of the week from now, like 7 days away, back in the low 80s. Might be one of those really nice winters around here. We had a rainy one last year, so I'm thinking maybe this year is going to be one of them good ones, where the weather's just pretty much nice all year. You get less rainstorms and more summer type weather in the middle of winter. Funny thing about down here in Southern California is winter is actually the better season. Summer is horrible. It's too hot unless you live at the beach, and you have to really be able to afford the beach to live there. I live in East County where rents aren't quite as high, but they're still high out here. But we get a lot more sun, especially in the summer. All year round we get more sun out here, but in the summertime, man, it is smoking hot out here. Too hot. So basically July, August, September is like kind of like winter around here. You hunker down, you stay inside, you don't want to do things outside. Your only escape is to go down to the beach. So enough about the weather and things like that. Let's get down to business here. I'm going to talk about this matchup right here. San Diego State Aztecs and the New Mexico Lobos. This is number 1 versus number 2. And there are some issues with the buys. I did do some notes yesterday on this game. And what I'm showing here is, well, the Aztecs are going to be dealing with some injuries and some buys in their running game. You got Ramondre Stevenson sitting out with a bye, and he's been a mainstay of the offense all season long, so they're going to miss him. A.J. Dillon has taken a step back this year, but he did have a good week last week, so maybe he can make an impact in this game. And then Devin Singletary had a very nice game. As you can see there, 8 fantasy points. That has not been the case for Devin all season long. He has not had those kinds of games. And we'll see if I can pull up the game log on him. As you can see, most of the time, he's not doing much. And last week just came out of nowhere. 30 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown. Big game for the Aztecs as they overcame the Tulane Green Tide. CeeDee Lamb, he's been having huge games. Every week, CeeDee Lamb has been going off. And you can see here, he had 12 points last week. And look at there. Over the last, 4 weeks, he's been above 6 fantasy points per game. Just unbelievable numbers. They're really leaning on CeeDee Lamb there in Dallas, and that bodes well for the Aztecs. I don't know how many more of those games he has, to be honest. It's kind of scary. You figure he's due for a letdown, and hopefully it's not in this game, because this game really could determine who gets that automatic bye into the Rose Bowl. You can see here on screen, Week 16 will be the Rose Bowl. That's number 4 versus number 1, and the number 1 team always gets the first-round bye, so the number 1 team won't have to play in Week 15. The top teams that are in the championship bracket during Week 15 will play in bowl games this year, kind of like a playoff. So the number 1 seed sits out. There will be 7 teams in the championship bracket most likely this year, so if that changes, if less than 7 teams qualify, then this little schedule might change a little bit, but I think this is the way it will be. Number 5 versus number 4 in the Peach Bowl. Number 7 versus number 2 in the Fiesta Bowl. And then number 6 versus number 3 in the Orange Bowl. And as you can see, I've told you guys what happens after all this. The highest ranked loser from these games goes straight to the Citrus Bowl, and then the other two losers will play in week 16. That'll be number 7 versus number 6 in the Alamo Bowl, and the winner goes to the Citrus Bowl. The loser goes to the Holiday Bowl to play for the 7th pick. And you can see this on the message board, this whole thing that I have assembled here. And getting back to the Aztecs, they are going to be without Josh Downs in this game as well. Josh Downs on a bye. He did have an injury issue as well, but it seems like that red flag has gone away. But De'Ami Brown with a solid game yesterday. This was 3 points, and that's unusual for De'Ami. He rarely shows up in the box score, so maybe he could do that again. Maybe he's getting more of a role with the Commanders. That would be nice for the Aztecs. No Juwan Johnson. He hasn't really averaged a lot of points this year, but actually in recent times he has been playing a little better. I mean, he had 3 points in week 9 anyways, and that was a crazy week. That was the record-breaking week for the Aztecs, that week 9 game against Ohio State. Moving right along, the defense looks strong. It looks like bye-free, pretty much injury-free. As you look up and down the roster here, you can see that. So the Aztecs have that going for them in this game. They're not going to have a lot of problems with players missing on defense, and that might be just what they need to compete with the New Mexico Lobos. Last week, this defensive line that is mostly built around the Rams was out. That almost could have been a problem for the Aztecs if they hadn't gotten big games elsewhere, mainly from their running attack and in the offense, the rest of the offense. Switching gears and looking at the Lobos, they have that 3-headed quarterback situation with Minshew, Bryce Young, and Aiden O'Connell now joining the group because of the benching of quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas. But today, or this week in this game, the Lobos will be 2-headed, not 3-headed, because Gardner Minshew sits out with a week 11 bye. So Bryce Young and Aiden O'Connell will be looked to. Bryce Young, not too impressive last week, but maybe he's due for a big game. He's got them in him. But I will say this. If you look at the numbers on Bryce, you can see that this season he has yet to throw for over 300 yards. 247 might have been his peak in week 5. I think it was. He's been under 200 yards the last 2 weeks. He even had negative numbers in week 9. And by comparison, you look at CJ Stroud, and CJ has thrown for more than 300 yards in week 2. He did it in week 4. He almost did it in week 3. He threw for 470 in that big week 9 game, and he threw for 356 last week. So he's got 4 games in excess of 300 yards. Bryce Young has none of those yet. The Aztecs in this league, of course, took C.J. Stroud with the number 1 overall pick when they could have had Bryce Young. And, of course, that was me that made that pick. I just really liked C.J. Stroud's game, all the highlights, films coming out of Ohio State, which are good, strong highlights because Ohio State is playing good teams. And I just liked his accuracy, basically. 6'3", 218. He definitely has the height advantage over Bryce Young. I think Young, might be surrounded by some inferior talent there in Carolina. That's the thing, too, about a lot of these quarterbacks. It's unfortunate, but these top quarterbacks get drafted on to the worst teams in the NFL, and they're probably better than their numbers are bearing out. But because of that, they're going to a mediocre team, mismanaged team perhaps. It cost them. I think you're seeing that with a lot of these guys. I think that maybe Trevor Lawrence could be better if he was with a better franchise. I mean, look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They don't even put anybody in the seats. It's those crowds are like the size of a small college, if that. Sometimes it's kind of amazing. I wonder how Jacksonville is able to keep a NFL franchise in their city when a city like Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, could really support a football team. I mean, I always think that they would put a stadium out there in Hillsborough somewhere, right around where Intel's at, Call it Intel Stadium. They have sponsorship. You could have a lot of corporate boxes there. They'd sell those. And Portland is a growing city. It's been a growing city for many years, almost 1 million people now. I mean, they got around 650 to 700,000 people, over 1 million in the metro area. They only have the Blazers. I mean, they should have a hockey team and a football team, but for some reason the local government just doesn't want it to happen. I don't know. It's weird because Jacksonville seems like a team that's ripe for the picking. Take that team away and send it somewhere where it's wanted. I wouldn't even mind if Portland kept that name, the Portland Jaguars. I like cats. I like the Jaguars. At any rate, yeah. So there's the quarterback breakdown. Looking at the running backs for New Mexico, Khalil Herbert is supposed to come back this week, so he would be much appreciated by the Lobos. Rashawn Johnson hasn't really worked out as well as they expected. This Michael Keaton Mitchell guy was Michael Keaton. Keaton Mitchell had a big game last week. I think it was limited carries. He had 9 carries in week 9 and 3 carries in week 10. He's definitely a big play guy. He had runs of 40 and 39 yards, touchdown runs in those games. So, is that sustainable? I don't know. I'm not sure if I feel a lot of heat from Keaton Mitchell. Mitchell Keaton. The names are backwards in this league. In my basketball league, they put the first name first. And so I switch over to football, and it kind of confuses me sometimes for a moment. At any rate, looking down the list here, Jamar Chase will be in for this game. Amon-Ra St. Brown is there. Puka Nacua back from a bye. They will be without Michael Pittman. But when you've got a list of receivers like this, you can afford a bye. And I expect big numbers from all these guys. The Aztecs will not be able to assert their advantage at wide receiver in a matchup such as this because the Lobos have all the fireworks to combat them. Trey McBride, the tight end for the Lobos, has been hot of late. Look at that, another 7-point game. He's had 2 games like this in the last 3 weeks. So obviously they're utilizing him in Arizona. And if you look at the targets for McBride, over the last 3 weeks, even 4 weeks, I mean, he's been getting targeted 5 times or better since week 6. But look at these targets recently. 14 in week 8, 9 last week. Unbelievable numbers. I mean, he's cleared 200 yards in receptions over the last 3 weeks. Trey McBride coming out of nowhere and giving the Lobos an advantage at the tight end position. Defensively, though, I talked about the Aztecs, and they have some issues defensively with bye, or not. They don't have issues defensively. The Aztecs are actually very healthy and bye-free. This is not the case for the Lobos. They're going to be missing their best defensive lineman, Carl Granderson. He's out with a bye. Kwity Paye, out with a bye and some sort of injury to boot. So only Aiden Hutchinson, who is very talented, will play in this one. And he's very capable of having a big game. So they do have some fireworks there on the defensive line. A look at Aiden Hutchinson's game log shows that he's been relatively quiet the last couple of weeks. Maybe he's due for a big game. As you can see, he has them. 5 points there in week 5, 7 in week 3. So maybe Aiden Hutchinson breaks out in this one and helps the Lobos to put some pressure on the Aztecs in this very key matchup. Looking down. Also, their best linebacker, Nate Landman, out with a bye. Anthony Jennings, who averages 2 points, he's out with a bye. Ernest Jones is nursing some sort of an injury. Looks like a knee problem. He is questionable, so it's hard to say if he's going to be out or not. That would bode well for the Aztecs if this guy didn't play. Also, Nick Bolton, who averages 2.9 a game, has been dealing with a wrist injury, and he is out indefinitely. Looks like he's going to be out until week 16, so no Nick Bolton in this one. Also bodes well for the Aztecs. Looking a little further down here at the defensive backs. This is one area that the Lobos look like they're pretty healthy. So summing it up here, we have ourselves some buys on defense for the Lobos. The Aztecs have some issues in the running game. They're going to be dependent on A.J. Dillon and Devin Singletary. repeating his huge performance, or at least, being a bigger part of the offense in Houston. Maybe that's going to be the case. I mean, he got 30 carries last week. So I think if the Aztecs can overcome that, if they can get production from the running game, they can stand up in the passing game to these guys. Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua. If they can stand up there and match their production, and maybe somehow this tight end here for the Lobos doesn't show up huge, Trey McBride, I think this is going to be a tight game. It's going to be a very good game. I see the Aztecs with the advantage at quarterback. I think this one's going to be one of those barn burners. It is definitely the game of the week, number 1 versus number 2.